Now, why is effectively communicating important in business?
I'll tell you what, I'll ask you and the audience a question really quickly. Think about a time that you have had to have a really tough conversation with somebody. Was it a mother, a father, a parental figure? Was it a sibling? Was it a friend? Was it someone you didn't even really know that well? Think about what you were feeling, think about what you were thinking, and then think about how that actually impacted you.
Yeah, I know. There was a coworker once. Oh my gosh. You know who I'm
I
talking
know
about.
exactly what you're talking about. But you know what you want to know the funny thing about it is whenever you're dealing with it under the guise of work, it's always 100 times worse because then you're dealing with either your livelihood or somebody else's livelihood. So when we think about why communication is important in the workplace, we're asking the question of how do we have difficult and courageous conversations in an effective manner that can still increase productivity.
My name's Achumboro and this is James Cogman. He's studying his Master's of Divinity at Yale, so we are super excited to have him. And he's going to be sharing a lot about communication in business.
I'm super excited to be here.
And that's a good point. Especially, I find it's great when you're well, it's hard enough when you're colleagues, but also what about when you're the boss, like me, a business owner? How am I supposed to effectively communicate to the people on my team?
Yeah.
What would you say? What are things I should do? Because sometimes I find myself, I have to be stern but understanding. You can't ever be too friendly. I feel that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel sometimes I can't be too friendly because there also has to be a sense of professionalism that's always present, regardless of whether somebody's doing great work, because you never know. You have to have people always take you seriously. So what do you think?
I would say that the first thing to keep in mind is that communication is a foundation for creating a culture.
True.
So how you decide to communicate with your employees, with those who are on your level, will determine what your culture looks like. And from a managerial perspective, I would say the one thing to keep in mind is to remember that your intent needs to match what the impact is. You need to remember that your intent needs to match your impact. A lot of times we go through life and we say things with the best of intent, and I'm sure everyone can think about that one time they said something to their boss, to their coworker, to their friend, and it lands completely differently, and then you sit there and you're feeling misunderstood.
That's a great thing, because sometimes we think just because we're intending something that it comes across the way we intended it to come across. I like to play back my conversations in my head to constantly see what am I saying right, what am I saying wrong, and how did that come across. So what are some things we can do to make sure our communication matches our intent?
I would say the biggest thing is making sure that we take time to listen and process before we actually speak. A lot of times when we want to respond to someone, we react rather than actually taking time to think things through and then give an effective response. I would say another thing is taking ownership when you do say something and it impacts somebody else in a negative way, because a great way to make communication worse is when you do something that impacts someone in a different way. Then, exactly.
You don't admit it. So being able to notice when somebody's telling you something's wrong or they don't like something you're saying and actually reflect on it without just reacting, oh, you should have taken it this way.
And being vulnerable enough to admit that sometimes you may have impacted someone in a way that you did not intend, and do the work to actually remedy the situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. So what are some, you say, just things that you have to avoid that is terrible communication?
Oh, that's simple. Have you ever watched tennis before?
Yes.
You know Serena, she's going for number 15 at the Open this year. She's one of my favorites.
Serena.
Go Serena. I might actually be going to Australia to see her.
Oh, wow.
And one thing that I've learned from tennis is that there's two sides of the net. And one player can only stay on that side of the net and not go to the other. Communication is the exact same way. When you're communicating with someone, you need to make sure that you communicate things that are on your side of the net. So what do I mean by that? That means when you're talking to somebody else, stick to the things that you know, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and how something impacts somebody else. one of the most dangerous things we can do in communication is try to ascribe feelings or emotions or actions to somebody else that we don't necessarily know for sure just because we assume them. You know, we all have that boss that we've dealt with in life that we think we know like the back of our hand, or an employee, or a family member, or a friend. But the reality is, we don't know what's going on inside of their minds unless
True.
they tell us.
True.
So when we communicate, the best thing we can do is to stick to what it is we know, what we think, and what we feel. But that also means we have to be vulnerable enough to acknowledge what we're feeling and put it out there.
Yes. Oh wow, that's powerful. That's very powerful. So what are some key tips, like a quick rundown of things you should do, especially as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an employer, of things you must do to effectively communicate and to build trust and build communication? Because it's different, as you say. The way I need to talk to my employees is much different than the way I can talk to my partners. I mean, the respect-wise is the same, but things that I need to understand in the power dynamics, right? So different things that I would say to a partner would be interpreted differently by one of my business partners versus one of my employees.
I would say the biggest thing on that is understanding that you don't actually have to break that power dynamic between the employee or between the partner. I think it's a matter of understanding that you can communicate with all of them on the same level and still build that level of trust that exists. Because you want an employee to be as honest with you as you would want your partner, correct?
That's very true.
But if you don't create a culture of trust and of communication where they feel that they can come to you in a respectful manner, as a partner would, to say give you feedback or to let you know if something can be improved upon, then at the same time, you're not necessarily getting that level of communication and trust that you want. So I would say the first thing would be to break that mold. The second thing I would say would be just to talk to your employees more. I would say getting to know them. It doesn't have to be on a personal level, but showing them that through your communication and through your actions that you really do care about their well-being, whether it's just within the workplace or maybe even outside of the workplace. I've always said that if an employee is happy, they're probably going to be more productive. If they're more productive, it increases work culture. If it increases work culture, then you're talking about a happy life for everybody, right?
Yes. Thank you, James. That was really great. Do you have anything else you would like to wrap up?
First, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to be with you and the audience. You all are amazing. I hope to see you all like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. And I would also love to say that just understand communication is not perfect. No one will ever perfect it. We're only going to strive for the perfection of it. So understand that you're going to mess up with communication. It's okay. The key, I would say, to effectively communicating is learning from your mistakes and growing each and every day with it. Imperfection is fine in communication. What is not okay in communication is not striving to remain better.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is Ataande Business Media. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Look forward to seeing you for a new video.